I'll give you another interesting thing that people don't reflect on. We ache to have them on our shows. We ache to debate them, but they won't debate us, and they won't come on our shows, and they won't have us on their shows. I have offered tens of thousands of dollars to any left-wing columnist on the New York Times to debate me anywhere they want. They could choose the moderator. They could choose the audience. And serious money, and that's 99% of the New York Times columnists are leftists. Maybe there are 3 that are not non-left. But they would never do it. I ache to debate them. I would raise $100,000 probably. I could probably raise that to have Ta-Nehisi Coates or Ibram X. Kendi debate Larry Elder. Okay, it would end the career of Ta-Nehisi Coates or Ibram X. Kendi.
And they know that.
They would be regarded as the moral and intellectual frauds that they are. Yeah. Larry would wipe the floor with them. The key to their success is not enabling us to have an audience.
All right. Friend of the show, Dennis Prager, who, for the record, I would talk to for free. I'm not a left-wing New York Times columnist. I would actually deny that there are any of those, but I am a left-wing columnist at a news venue, so arguably one that's even to the left of the New York Times. All right. I am joined by our super producer, Jake Appett, union organizer by day, podcast producer by night, as well as by our primo graphic designer, J. Andrew World. Who anybody who watched the postgame last episode knows he's not broadcasted from there yet. Is now a homeowner, so he's probably going to slide into the right very quickly here. But in any case, I want to talk about Dennis Prager, because that is just a remarkable claim.
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of 2 aspects to that claim, right? One is that he's conflating liberals with leftists, probably on purpose. But I think there are liberal pundits who would be down to debate him. And I just want to say, I think it would be bad for the left if I were to go and debate someone on his podcast, just because I'm not really a strong debater. But if I was paid anywhere, basically anything, I would go on that show. And I think most leftists could use $50,000. So I'd be happy to ruin the left. I don't care. Ruin my career. That was my career, making $100,000 on the Prager show.
Fair enough. Eddie, how much would you take to debate Dennis Prager?
That actually sounds pretty good. And then I can just not worry about being on screen ever again and just work on my art.
Fair enough. So Dennis tweeted this out, or PragerU, I should say. The institution of higher learning that bears his name tweeted this out. This clip of him saying that he aches to debate leftists, but they won't come on his show. His ache remains unrelieved. And there were a couple things. Well, I will say, of course, because it is, as the late Michael Brooks would put it, a core brand proposition for us that we can't kind of not respond to that, right? So we had a little response. I quote tweeted Dennis, say, "Hi at Dennis Prager. I'd be delighted to chat with you either on my show at GTAA show, or you can host it through at PragerU, or I'm sure at Modern Day Debate or some other neutral platform. Be happy to host it. Your call. But if you truly ache to debate late leftists, let's set this up." That's bare leaf and Starkey. That is just a straightforward, that's just a straightforward acceptance. Yeah, it's a little bit in the last sentence, But up until then, right, it is just a straightforward acceptance of the invitation. I was not the only one, right? Let's put it like that, right? There were. There were quite a few other takers as soon as they tweeted out that clip. I know, Sam Cedars, guest a couple episodes back. In fact, I think had a tweet that had many more likes and RTs than the original Prager one, saying, "Yeah, let's do it, man." And then he clarified that he's not quite a prominent enough leftist or something like that. There's something interesting.
Weasel.
However you would diagnose that. But it seems like, Dennis's dance card could be kept pretty full, right? Talking to people on the left who want to talk to him. I have, pretty much, if you know a leftist who likes to do debates with right wingers, they probably expressed that, over the weekend on Twitter in response to that PragerU tweet. But there's something that's, I think, in a way, okay. So I should say that's one interesting follow-up. There's another little part two to this, which is that our old friend Jordan B. Peterson, formerly of the University of Toronto, also quote tweeted this. So the tweet itself, if you listen to this in the podcast later, it's just PragerU, and the text is just, they won't debate us, and then it's that exact clip that we just showed. And Jordan Peterson quote tweeted it to say, cowards, and I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing this yet. I have to admit, this is not a word that I commonly use. Montebanks?
It's not one that's in my vocabulary. I know I would ache if I had to try to work that into a sentence.
It's tough when you're dealing with like intellectual titans like Poole and Peterson, and their terminology is just beyond what a lay person could even aspire to.
Yeah, no, fair. So yeah, it's so of course this is pretty. Oh, good. Okay, I pronounced it correctly. That's a load off. Now I'm just start saying that all the time, right? They're like every person we talk about today. I'm like, all right, let's get the next Montebank clip on here.
Also, you can use Montebankery.
Expect a lot more Montebankery on tonight's show. We have a lot more in stuff.
It means a person who deceives others, especially in order to trick them out of their money, a charlatan. Historical, a person who sold patent medicines in public places.
All right. Which I've got to say sounds like a fair description of Jordan Peterson, but he is in this case accusing others of mountebankery. And this is very funny, I think, for a few reasons, right? So, and it's like to the point where it's a little hard to know where to start, right? Let me just start with this. This is like old stuff. We don't have like tweets for this, but let's go all the way back to the year of our Lord 2018. If you can, do like the old movie flashback thing where the music that was added in 2018 starts playing and it's a little misty, So in 2018, another former guest of the show, Richard Wolff, publicly offered to have a discussion with Jordan Peterson. Peterson said no. You can watch back when I was doing weekly videos for the Zero Books YouTube channel, 2018, 2019, I did one about this, where I played the clip of Peterson saying that he would not debate Richard Wolff, basically because he equates Marxism with like the crimes of Stalin and Mao, and thinks that just as National Socialism should be excluded from the debate, that Marxism should be also. And so, since Wolff calls himself a Marxist, that he should be exiled from polite society, so he's not willing to talk to him.
So he deplatformed him.
Yeah, very yeah, right. I mean, he thinks that Wolff should be canceled. Yeah,
we're guilty of platforming Professor Wolff on our show. That's
yeah, repeatedly. We have repeatedly platformed Professor Wolff, despite his various crimes. But yeah, now this is pretty funny because he got over his belief that all Marxists are Stalinists, which is the same thing as being a Nazi. he got over that to debate another of our former guests, Slavoj Žižek. Which honestly is funny in many ways, because if anything, I love Slavoj. He's one of my favorite guests. He's one of my favorite people. He's awesome, right? I just got to spend some time with him in person when I was in the UK, and he's very entertaining. He's like, it's a lot like the way he is on YouTube, but like a lot more swearing. He's wonderful. But like also of the two of them, right? Wolf and Žižek, Wolf is the one who like spends more time talking about stuff like the importance of democracy and how what he advocates is different than the sort of flawed version of state socialism that existed in the USSR and stuff like that, right? I mean, like he makes a much sharper distinction just because Slavoj is the kind of he's the kind of like continental philosophy kind of intellectual who sort of revels in ambiguity and contradictions or whatever. So it's like he's just not going to come down that sharp on that stuff, right? So given that, right, it's hilarious that he was willing to do Žižek, but not Wolf. You could speculate uncharitably maybe about what the difference might be, and I do that. In Canceling Comedians, I do speculate uncharitably about that. Because I mean, Žižek's a much bigger draw, right? I mean, this like they said the guy who was introducing them at the beginning of that debate said they were selling that scalpers were selling tickets to Žižek Peterson for more than they were selling Maple Leaf tickets, right? This is guy's a huge draw according to non-ironic friend of the show, Russ Sabriglia, who I talked to about this, back in 2020. Slavoj donated his half of the proceeds to this charity for Indigenous Canadians, and Peterson, Russ believes, did not. So you can you can speculate that there's an element of mountebankery here, but in any case. This happened in 2019, Žižek Peterson, and I think it was widely understood to not go well for Peterson. That he famously blanked out when he was asked to name the postmodern neo-Marxist. He couldn't do it, right? In general, I mean, even like if you go look at like the Jordan Peterson Reddit, like from like the post from the next day, I think his fans weren't quite sure what they just said. And so this might help to explain why more recently Peterson has been very, very like every once in a while the impulse strikes him to talk to a leftist again, and then he kind of thinks better of it, right? So we've got an example here. So do we have his call out tweet of yet another former guest, Nathan Robinson? All right. So this is Jordan Peterson. Sorry, Dr. Jordan B. Peterson. You always know that people are smart when they have the doctor has to be part of the Twitter profile.
Yes. And the B obviously stands for Montebank, but the B is capitalized.
Yeah, it's just capitalized in the middle of the word. Yeah. So Dr. Jordan B. Peterson, November 3rd, 2021, he's quote tweeted somebody who's talking about Nathan's article, The Intellectual We Deserve, which was, basically this like one of the really early kind of like 10,000 word sort of takedown essays about Peterson back in 2018. And Peterson is still bothered by it. We've, we actually watched one of those clips, a clip of Peterson talking about that. One of the last times Nathan was on the show. So Dr. Jordan B. Peterson says what Nathan Robinson does not understand, bucko, is not by definition gibberish at Nathan J. Robinson. And anytime said Mr. Robinson, which I love that location, the said Mr. Robinson. That reminds me of like the way Charlie starts talking when he's about to start talking about bird law, right? That's the you had a said law says, and anytime said Mr. Robinson wants to find out what those diagrams, he's talking about the gibberish diagrams from Maps of Meaning mean, I'm available, and we'll just see, and we'll see just what's gibberish and who is spouting it. Okay, so sounds like he's going to do it, huh? Like it sounds like he's making a very direct offer that he's going to do it, right? It's not just like, when we got excited because he accidentally referred to me as the best of the left because he read a tweet of an article that he didn't read and he misinterpreted it. So he referred to me as the best of the left, and I said, well, if I'm the best of the left, you should have no objection to having a conversation, and that never happened. That was summer of 2021. It's November 2021. He's making the offer. Fast forward to this weekend after the Cowards and Mountebanks tweet, and we have these screenshots provided by Nathan himself. Or do we have them? All right. Yeah. So there's actually a second tweet I missed. Sorry. This is a week after the first one, where it's a quote tweet of Glenn Lowry talking about his conversation with Nathan Robinson and how good the conversation was. Glenn Lowry is a pretty conservative guy, so shows that you should think this is good proof of concept. And in the QT, Dr. Jordan B. Peterson says, maybe at Nathan J. Robinson wants to talk to me. So second call out. To which Nathan responds, would love to do this. DM or email nathan@currentaffairs.org and we can set it up. Should be a spirited and clarifying conversation. Sounds good. Next screenshot. All right. So Nathan has waited a couple weeks, I think this is about 3 weeks actually, after that first Twitter interaction. I think I actually remember encouraging him to follow up on it because I really want to see this happen. And he says, hello, my name is Nathan J. Robinson, and I'm the editor-in-chief of Current Affairs Magazine. Professor Peterson recently indicated on Twitter that he'd be interested in speaking with me, and I would like to try and arrange that if possible. I'm someone who, as he knows, has sharp disagreements with his work, but the conversation would be respectful. And I think many people would enjoy seeing this kind of engagement with a critic. I'm just going to pause here and say, it's fucking Nathan Robinson. I don't know how disrespectful Peter, what Nathan's gonna like break a chair over him or something. I don't think so, right? I am someone. Okay, I think many people would enjoy seeing this kind of engagement with a critic. Would he be available for a conversation? It would appear in audio form in the Current Affairs podcast and video on our YouTube channel, and then to be transcribed for our print magazine. I'm happy to accommodate his schedule, which I know will be packed. I would like to try to get a decent amount of time, because I think it takes a while to hash out disagreement in a thorough way. Thank you, Nathan J. Robinson, Current Affairs. All right, next. January 31st, second email. Hello, following up on this request. Thank you, Nathan. So, kind of sounds to me like Dr. Jordan B. Peterson thought better of it.
It's like he ghosted him.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of funny, right? Because it's like, after all this, right? If you had repeatedly challenged somebody to talk to you in November, and then in November, December, and January, right, they make 3 attempts to take you up on it, and then you ghost them, I would maybe not be QT the leftists don't want to debate with the cowards and Montebags, right? I would think, I don't know, maybe he forgot. Make of that what you will. Okay, I want to move on. So I should say in a few minutes, maybe 15 minutes, depending on how long this takes, we are going to have our main guest on for today, who is Matt Lech, who, of course, is a producer of the Majority Report, is the co-host of the Left Reckoning podcast, one of our favorite left podcasts. It's not this one. And he is being brought on because of a debate that I'm doing this Saturday at the Minds event at the Beacon Theater in New York City. We have, I believe we have the link to that in the description for the episode. So I am going to be arguing with these 3 people. So it's going to be, there are 3 panels. The first one is Coleman Hughes and Cordell West. I think it might be also Barbara Kimberly. Second one is Destiny, a bunch of right wingers. Third one is, so the last one of the evening is me, James O'Keefe, Tim Pool, and Tulsi Gabbard. So I thought, hey, who do I know who knows a lot about all three of these people? And that would be my good friend Matt Lech. So he is yes, the Matt Lechian media universe. So he is going to come on to provide expert testimony on the three of them, and watch some clips with me, and it should be a really good time. I should say we are not doing a philosophy segment today. Jen is fine. We just it's just a busy time, and we couldn't pull together something good for you tonight, so we're going to hold off until next episode. But we are going to be going through those three people, Tulsi Gabbard, Tim Pool, and James O'Keefe, with Matt Lech as the main attraction tonight. So yeah, no philosophy segment, but like last week, kind of the entire main show was one big philosophy segment, so I don't feel too bad about it. There are different food groups for this show, and this is definitely another one, right? There's philosophy, but there's also stuff like this, and then in that I believe we're going to do a toast with Matt for the election results in Columbia, which is very exciting. We will get to that, and then the post game, we're going to be joined by the People's Economics professor, Rob Larson. And what I brought on Rob for, that we're going to be doing the post game for GTAA patrons, patreon.com/Ben Burgis, if you want to sign up now, $5 a month. So the post game for patrons, we are going to be watching some stuff. Well, part of this went like extremely viral over the weekend. This is our good friend and also former guest of the show, Krystal Ball, on the show of somebody who has never been on Give Them an Argument. Maybe one day he will, Bill Maher. And she's explaining some things about inflation and the Wall Street bailout and other things to Maher. And it is very funny. It is very good stuff. I think we might be getting a mildly tipsy Rob, but that's okay. That's sort of post-game appropriate. So we will. So we'll be doing that. But before we start, before we have Matt on, I want to watch the first part of that Krystal appearance on Bill Maher, because that hasn't been getting quite as much attention as the economic stuff, which I understand why, because the economic stuff is amazing. But I do want to watch this. I should say, to set this up, that we have, I wrote a piece for the Daily Beast about Bill Maher a couple months ago. I didn't write the title. It's Bill Maher hasn't changed. He's always been a cringe centrist. I don't use the word cringe as an adjective, but I do stand by the sentiment, right? That Bill Maher has always been this bad. And that's what I argue for in the piece. But to research that, I obviously had to watch a lot of Bill Maher, and it's a little much. And so I haven't actually subjected myself to like even a minute of his show since I wrote that article until this weekend. On Friday night, which is when Krystal was on the show, I was not watching TV. I was actually doing an event in Baltimore at Red Emma's, worker-owned bookstore that has been very good in promoting, my books and Michael's book before that and all that stuff. We love those guys. So I was doing that, but then actually on the flight back, I watched a bunch of the appearance, and then I finished it later. And it is outstanding. It is worth breaking my Bill Maher fast for. So I want to just go right into this. So in the first of the two clips we're going to watch right now, they're talking about the January 6th hearings and basically how we should think about the root causes of Trumpism and what it would take to sort of overcome that. And what I'd like you to track as we're watching this, because Bill, I don't think, does a very good job of tracking this, is what he and Krystal are actually disagreeing about and what they aren't. So let's get this first clip up in here. Yeah. So first thing to note here, Bill Maher thinks that there's a big important, I guess, moral distinction. There's a that like Ron DeSantis is not a enemy of democracy the way that that Trump did, right? Ron DeSantis is fine. He's just a regular Republican, I guess. Which, I was saying actually on Thursday night, I just got into Baltimore. I had dinner with one of the worker owners at Red Emma's, and we were talking about this. And I kind of commented to this guy that I think that actually Ron DeSantis might be even more of a product, like even more pure a product of right wing Twitter than Donald Trump is, right? I mean, like every time there's some stupid little culture war freak out on the right, Ron DeSantis immediately like does a press conference and says he's like introducing to, oh my God, there are like, 3 video clips in the entire country in the last, whatever, 10 years of a child, going to see a drag show, so we need to, we need to like pass a law, right, to make sure that can't happen, right? I mean, this is, I don't understand like what possible calculus would lead you to think that like Ron DeSantis is going to be like if he were elected president would be like better somehow than Donald Trump. I mean, do you guys have a sense of that? Am I missing something here?
Yeah, I guess the only thing is like, do you think that if Ron DeSantis lost, would he try to stay in power? I mean, he would definitely do it like a little bit, like Bush, you know what I mean? But like, he probably wouldn't do it like as much, right? That's my like. I guess that's kind of what he's referring to. And I understand like there's a specific stress that I do feel too of like, oh, if Trump wins again, is he just going to declare himself dictator? It's like it's like a very liberal stress in that like we're just worried about the tip of the spear, so to speak, when everything is the underlying causes. So I agree with Krystal there, but I guess that could be the difference.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think that the one thing I'd point out I mean, I do think that what's true is that DeSantis would be smoother about it, right? Like that he wouldn't be like quite as out and open, like this, like, oh yeah, no, I would like you to do a coup for me. Please do a coup, right? Like he's not going to be quite like that the way that like Trump would be. He would be, I mean, he would be smoother about it. Like, I mean, you mentioned Bush, right? I mean, the difference between Bush and Trump is that Bush actually succeeded in getting someone to install him in office after he lost a Democratic election, right? Trump just whined a lot about the fact that nobody would do that for him.
Well, if Trump's dad loved him, he would have bought him a Supreme Court like Bush's dad did.
Fair enough. This is really on Fred Trump. But like, I don't know. I mean, I guess I just think like the difference between something like January 6th and Bush v. Gore is that, Bush v. Gore was a lot more serious, right? I mean, like January 6th was kind of like, well, he couldn't actually get a judge to overturn the election for him. He tried, right? Many times he tried. But even the ones he appointed were like, lol, fuck no, right? We're not going to do that for you. Like, what's in it for us? And, I mean, as far, like, I get that, like, look, do I think that Donald Trump would have any, like, moral inhibitions about just declaring himself like Augustus and he was going to rule for life? No, absolutely not, right? I think that if he had some avenue to get away with that, I think he would love it, right? There's nothing about his character, right, that would stop him from doing that. What would stop him from doing it is he just doesn't have the capacity to do it, right? I mean, like if some of those big, beautiful generals wanted to install him as president for life, I'm sure he would say yes, right? But like they don't like him, and even if they did like him, right? What would be in it for them, right? I mean, why would they? It would also be incredibly destabilizing to the system. I mean, this is right now what we've got going in America. These like kind of shitty half democratic elections and this very narrowly constrained political system and everything. I mean, from the perspective of the capital accumulation death machine, what we've got going now is great, right? I mean, like from a Chamber of Commerce kind of perspective, there's absolutely no reason why you would mess with that for the sake of like this one dude's ego, I All right, all of which is to say that I think DeSantis would in fact be as bad as Trump, right? That would be my take on it. I get that Trump is like a little bit more of a strange psychopathic child in a certain sense, right? Than DeSantis is. I also think in terms of like pushing like really bad reactionary policies, I actually think DeSantis might be more effective than Trump.
No argument here. That's I mean, it's anything is possible in politics, but it seems like he would be. It seems like he would be, right? Because Trump would like overplay his hand and get like shot down by courts, right? Like all the time. So,
and I feel like DeSantis knows how the process of passing a bill works, and Trump doesn't.
Yeah, Trump, I think that like, right, his staffers could literally tell him anything, and he would just be like, "Oh, okay," like that's. No, sorry, it's a Tuesday. There are no laws passed on Tuesday. Didn't you know that? It's like, oh, okay. Like that's, yeah, I think that's right. Krystal's larger point I think she's making here is like, like the Democrats on the one hand really badly want to, what they want to do, they're like half the reason they're doing these hearings, right, is they, even in the midterms, right, they want to try to run on like, was Trump a bad guy? Right, like, and that's because that's their like winning issue. They think. I don't think it's going to work. We'll see. But that's what they want to run on. And I think the point that Krystal's making is there's this huge tension between that and the fact that supposedly they think Trumpism is this grave threat, but at the same time, this is not a conspiracy. There's lots of documentation. You can watch. David Dole did a video on this, the Rational National. You can just look up Rational National, Bill Maher, Krystal Ball, and he provides a lot of supporting documentation for this and a lot of her other claims. It's like, yeah, this is the, it's called like the Pied Piper strategy, right? Where like the Democrats will intentionally, will actually throw support in the primaries to whoever they think the craziest Republican is, on the assumption that the craziest Republican will be easier to beat, which sometimes works and sometimes gets you President Donald Trump, but I think her point is like, look, if they're really worried about these especially crazy Republicans and the threat they pose, then, they wouldn't be doing this, right? If they're, and I think, and look, I wish Trump would be prosecuted for, I think that like, I, am not a lawyer, right? But on the face of it, so you could argue about whether he's actually legally or just morally responsible, but like, all of the idiots who took him seriously, they had the book thrown at them, right? The Q shaman, right? Is like, despite being, kind of mentally ill on the face of it, right, is serving a few years in prison right now, right? So it's like all the people who, followed him over the edge, right? They're getting the full force of the law. Whereas the guy who like whipped them up to do it in the first place, right, by feeding them all this nonsense is continuing to, so if anybody's going to be punished, I would like it to be Trump in some way, right? If there's a good legal way to do it, but I think her point is they're just not serious about it. Okay, I do want to get to Matt, so let's play the second clip.
Oh man, wow. Yeah.
Clever. That is like the third time I've watched that clip, and I have to throw up in my mouth a little bit every time I see it. That is just astonishing. So there is a whole other thread. I will say, to give Bill the only kind of due I'll give him tonight, he's not nearly as much of a piece of shit as like the other guest, James Kirchik, right? That guy's much worse, right? The legal theory that Kirchik is giving is that heads of state should be able to commit crimes because if they're being prosecuted, presumably it's by the Justice Department that comes next, and you can't do that, or else that's like politicization. And I think it's terrible that Ford pardoned Nixon. I think Nixon absolutely should have gone on trial for. And by the way, what Nixon did, right, actually was very much undermining democracy, right? He's using I mean, he's basically having a little private intelligence force, illegally spy on his political opposition and sabotage them. And I mean, that is absolutely the kind of thing you should be prosecuted for. And that, by the way, the fact that he wasn't, helped to reassure future presidents, I mean, think about Iran-Contra, think about the CIA torture scandals under Bush, that they wouldn't be prosecuted either, right? I mean, like, if anything, like I said, I mean, if I, if it were up to me, right, I would like the Justice Department to try to come up with a reasonable leak theory where they could prosecute Trump, but like, also, like, that's not even as bad as those other ones, right? I mean, like, those other ones are even worse, and they should absolutely all have been prosecuted for that. That out of the way. Like, I think the bigger thing is just this. Like, okay, Bill Maher is supposed to be a liberal, right? I mean, he's reacted to the idea that locking people up doesn't solve the root social causes of crime, like, just by like just sort of like just this gibbering laughter. Like, that's I don't even have anything like smart to say about it. I don't have anything funny to say about it. That's just gross.
It is. I have a quick story. I had a friend from college. Before he went into college, him and a friend of his walked into a convenience store, and his friend pulled out a sawed-off shotgun and murdered the guy behind the counter. My friend went to trial as because he was an accomplice in murder, and robbing this convenience store. And he was fortunate enough to have a judge that gave him a chance. And he had a choice: either go to college or go to jail. And he chose college, which is how I met him. And that completely it wasn't just that. It was also just seeing his grandmother just destroyed by what by him being an accomplice to this murder. Those things allowed him to turn his life around. And he is a much better person now because this judge gave him a chance. And I think we should have more, a more therapeutic justice system in some ways. Obviously,
totally.
Not everybody can be, obviously George Bush is still going to if he was given a chance, he'd still bomb, countries with an inch of their lives. So, he's probably going to be in jail forever. He could do all his paintings in jail.
No, I mean, I think like,
a good therapeutic setting for him.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. I mean, I think, I think maybe, after a couple of decades, I think we could talk about, some kind of release program, but yeah, no, I think I'm 100% with you. And again, this is pretty basic stuff. I mean, like, this is not like some crazy radical socialist belief. I mean, this is just like kind of like old fashioned, like, left liberalism, right? I mean, just like, yeah, just have some compassion to people who are, whose choices are shaped by social circumstances that are entirely under their control, and understand. I mean, even beyond compassion for them, just understand that, like, locking people up and throwing away the key is not actually an effective strategy for eliminating crime, right? I mean, the point I always like to make about this is, like, we don't even have to look ahead to, like, theorize about, like, I don't know, fully automated luxury communism in the 23rd century. We could just look at, like, Norway right now, right? Norway right now has a way more liberal and humane criminal justice system than we do, right? Anders Breivik is eventually going to get out of jail if they don't change the law, right? But they have a way, way lower rate of violent crime. Why is that, right? Like, I mean, unless you're going to go with the, dumb shit explanation that there's something about Scandinavian genes, and then, I guess you have to find a way to explain away the Vikings, right? Then, like,
if you watched The Northman yesterday, like I did, which is supposedly historically accurate, other than like the mythology stuff, you would not believe that for a second. It was the most violent movie I've ever seen in my life. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly, right? It's clearly there's no genetic explanation here. Clearly there's no cultural explanation here. The explanation is that it's, in certain respects, a much more egalitarian society, right? I mean, there's a expansive welfare state, built by, socialist parties allied to strong unions, and there's just much less poverty, right? And so you have, you have much less street crime. I mean, this is not rocket science.
And I think even Bill Maher knows that on some level. He completely changed the goalpost. The second she said that wouldn't solve crime, he's like, oh, that wouldn't help crime. And I mean, she's not saying like, she's not even saying ACAB or like, abolish prison. She said like, if you are arrested, if you commit a crime, you should be arrested, but that doesn't solve everything.
Yeah,
and he just didn't want to talk. Yeah, and he just didn't want to talk.
Yeah, clearly it doesn't address the underlying issue. I mean, we have a fantastically, unusually harsh criminal justice system in the United States, and yet we still keep having crime, right? I mean, like this, which is exactly her point, right? When she's like, yeah, of course I would say the same thing about street crime, right? Of course that doesn't address it. But anyway, I'm probably just getting out my complicated feelings here as somebody who used to actually like Bill Maher decades ago. Confession is good for the soul. I'll admit that. So we are going to bring on Matt Lech from Left Reckoning. I think Jake is probably going to stick around for at least some of this. But Andy, I will see you again at the end of the show. All right, sounds good. All right. The one, the only, the man, the myth, the legend, Matt Lech. How you doing?
Hey guys, good to be here.
Yeah.
I'm doing well.
Good. So I as I kind of said at the beginning of the show, I brought you on today because I was thinking about this, right? Got to do I'm in the middle of doing my the Eye of the Tiger training montage for Saturday. And think, okay, who do I know who knows a lot about all three of these people? Tulsi Gabbard, Tim Pool, and James O'Keefe. And I thought, oh, Matt does. So
yeah, much more than I would like to, I think. But yes, I know quite a lot about all these people. Two of which actually I mentioned right up top because I revisited these in preparation. Is two are subject of Timba on Toast. Exhaustive video essays. Timba's got like 4-part series on James O'Keefe, which is very interesting, and a 2-parter on Tim Pool. So, that's where pretty much all my knowledge comes from, actually.
All right, well, shoot me those links for sure. But I guess what would make sense to me would be to start, because two of these three people, I think, have try to think how to put this right. I think James O'Keefe is comfortable with his identity as a conservative, right. With Tim and Tulsi, it's more complicated. So I guess it would probably make the most sense to me to start the relative left end, I guess, of the spectrum with Tulsi, since after all. She was a Bernie-crad in 2016.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, she endorsed Bernie, which from the Brett Weinstein school of qualifying as a leftist is really, there's your diploma. So yeah.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I will say I remember when that people would constantly bring that up about Brett in 2018, and I always said, okay, but as he endorsed Bernie in 2020, I'd like to, see if that happens, right?
Same with Tulsi, actually. Come to think of it. Also, endorse Bernie.
Exactly. Oh, well, not only did she not endorse Bernie, she ran against him and endorsed Biden before Bernie had dropped out of the race.
That's right.
So, but I suppose you could say to give her due, I think even on foreign policy, it's more of a mixed bag than many people realize. There are definitely some skeletons rattling around in that closet, but I think that many of her foreign policy positions are decent, certainly much better than most conservatives would have. And
yeah, I would say even relative, just to cut in there, like even relative to like the good, like say the Republicans that would vote against the Ukraine funding, for instance. She's probably even better than those guys generally, I would say, even though like she's about as maybe as trustworthy.
Yeah, no, exactly. I did. So what Matt is referring to there, we might actually still have this graphic from last week. I don't know, but I did so this is something that's come up a good bit while we were on break for this show that there was a lot of discussion, including, I'll say, another former guest of the show who I have a lot of disagreements with about things like this, about how to kind of read those guys, right? The Republicans who voted against the Ukraine funding. And so I wrote this article for Current Affairs. It was called something like congressional progressives need to do better on foreign policy. That doesn't mean Republicans are doves. Where, I have the hot take that, there are legitimate criticisms of like AOC, but like Josh Hawley's worse, right? And not just in general, obviously, but like worse on foreign policy. That like he's a huge anti-China hawk, and et cetera, right? There are lots.
The position on Israel-Palestine for a lot of those folks is pretty revealing, I think.
Right, exactly. And then you can say even on domestic policy, she's got like a standard Democrat kind of position on healthcare. At least she did in 2020. She started out supporting Medicare for all, then she kind of did the same thing that most of the Democratic candidates did, where they, basically said, well, okay, maybe not quite, but like public option. And they had like different rhetorical strategies for how to frame it. And hers was just to continue to say Medicare for all. But then like, if you actually looked at it, it was like what she meant was just public option.
Yeah. I mean, she followed Elizabeth Warren. She was really like a Wario version of Elizabeth Warren. Right? Like she did the exact same, she felt the same hurdle, which is like that thing where the press is like, but you're going to take away people's, what about these union folks' healthcare? You're going to take away that? And Bernie's just like, yeah, a single payer system's the best system. And Tulsi's like, actually, no, that's a little bit anti-American. We don't want to be doing that. And it's like, this is just what Warren is doing. And yet all of like the Tulsi fan, anyway, I don't want to get started on that too much.
No, I mean, no, exactly though, right? I mean, it's the same, but I mean, it's the same policy. Like, yeah, I mean, it's like Warren, in fact, wasn't even quite as bad, although Warren was, I think ended up.
They both shivved Bernie just from different sorts of, trajectories.
Yeah, totally, right? I mean, I think Warren was like sort of tried to outsmart herself and ended up saying some pretty goofy things that didn't really make sense, that we're going to do these like this 2-stage thing where we're going to have like 2 massive overhauls of the American healthcare system back to back, and totally believe the second one's coming, and then but like Tulsi is just, I mean, she wasn't even doing that, right? I mean, she wasn't even saying, oh, someday we'll have Medicare for all, right? She was saying exactly, I mean, it was the Mayor Pete thing, right? Medicare for all who want it, which is just a, of course, as we all know, is just a way of saying we're going to have a 2-tier healthcare system for, for rich people and the rest of us. But okay, so she has some vaguely leftish positions on different issues. On the other hand, Chick, do we have the Fox News clip of Tulsi? This is the one from the 5. I think it's the last one I gave you.
Voters in San Francisco last night sent a big message on public safety, recalling Progressive District Attorney Chesa Boudin after major public outcry that his approach on crime was too lenient on criminals. Now, Boudin is blaming the right for his loss.
People are angry. They're frustrated. And I want to be very clear about what happened tonight. The right-wing billionaires outspent us 3-1. They exploited an environment in which people are appropriately upset. And they created an electoral dynamic where we were literally shadow boxing.
Sounds like a bunch of excuses to me. The results, the people's voices were heard, and it sent a very clear message that even the most left-leaning cities are fed up with surging crime rates.
She's giving off a real, like, are we the baddies vibe, Like, it's just aesthetically, it's very, seems very evil.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's like the real bottom drawer of just like fascist propaganda, where it's like the repeat image of a mother getting hit by a car with her infant. Like, then this guy doesn't, he likes this, I think, actually. He likes mothers. I mean, you could just tell, like, he said billionaires, but look at this mother getting hit by a car. It's like, oh my God. And, it's not like, I mean, people also should know a little bit about the genesis of Tulsi. Like, I'm old enough to remember. I remember like doing talking with Michael about her. She was trolling Obama for not saying radical Islamic terror before.
I remember that. Yes.
Yeah. She was like that was how she was made. That's where she met the booker at Fox News, right? It was like, I'll come on there as a Democrat and say that Obama is a little bit soft on Muslims. And you know, there's a Bernie endorsement. It's like, well, she said the Muslim thing. She does go to APAC quite a lot as well, those conferences, but you know what? She did back our boy. And, you know, we'd take anybody at that point. Big tent, I guess.
No, exactly. I mean, and look, I mean, I have, you know, I mean, I was, you know, we were talking about Bill Maher earlier, you know, the article I wrote about Bill Maher, Daily Beast. I mean, one of the things I said in there is like 99% of the article was shitting on him. But I mean, like I said, look, I mean, he did have that like brief swing to the left where he was supporting Bernie for a minute. If he came back, great. Right?
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Hey, doors, it's a revolving door. And like I definitely remember there's at least a couple times on TMBS that we would take a toast, like, you know, gotta hand it to Tulsi here, coming through with a nice talking point at a moment that's actually useful.
Yeah, totally. Right. So it's like, look, I mean, I am all in favor of, you know, when people come around to your political positions, you should welcome them with open arms. But and so, yeah, in 2016, sure, you know, I think it was absolutely the right thing to do to happily accept her support. But then if she's going to run for president herself, the fact that she had this history of saying that, well, sure, Obama might be, you know, drone bombing American danger and, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But he's not willing to say the magical words radical Islamic terrorism. And if you don't say those words in that order, you're not really serious about this, right? Like, that's relevant, right? Because you have to look at somebody's overall record to try to get a sense of how they're going to act in the future, which, you know, seems totally reasonable to me.
I mean, politicians do those things to, you know, reach out to certain coalitions, right? Like, it's just a bit basic.
Yeah, no, exactly, right? So, and this Chesa Boudin thing is like really bad. Like, I mean, this is I don't think we should skim over this lightly, right? I mean, this is, you know, like we're talking about, you know, a prosecutor who came in and they I think Fred Jason put it really well. This is revolution, right? I mean, it did exactly what he said he would do, right? You know, like this is, and then, you know, I think, you know, probably ran up against some of the limits of that, that like one, I think that at times when people are particularly concerned about crime, not that it actually went up under Boudin, but whatever, right? You know, then, you know, that it's very easy for, you know, to like paint that in a certain light. And I also think that like, you know, I also think there's like a built-in structural problem that like, okay, the people that you're really helping by having a more humane approach to the prosecutor's office don't really throw around a lot of money or exercise a lot of political influence or frankly, you know, even vote that much, right? So, you know, for all sorts of reasons, it makes sense as an outcome. But I mean, this just seems really low to me to be like, oh, see, you know, the people were saying that, you know, that you know, we won't stand for this, you know, like somewhat more humane approach, you know, to prosecution.
No, and I think a centrist take would just be like, yeah, billionaires did spend a lot of money, but like crime is an issue. But she just went full on, yeah.
Oh, talking about the billionaires is just an excuse.
Exactly. Like that's objectively true. That right, like what he's saying, and she's just like doing that, like stare old people in the face, and shout at them mentality.
Yeah. Well, there's this posture that they're against the sort of like tech elites, but this was all driven by tech elites. Jason Calacanis, he's like some sort of, he invested in Uber, and you know he did a few other nice investments, got some money to play with. Started a GoFundMe the day Chase like won office, say we need to like keep this guy accountable, and hired some hack to like keep him accountable. And we see what that is, which is that Like, it's to extrapolate rising crime that is frankly happening everywhere because there's a pandemic and a giant inflation and people lost jobs and had their lives upended, and there's mass death. The people, that's like one progressive prosecutor. Actually, it's two. It's Krasner as well. Like, so somehow those two guys have caused crime to
San Francisco and Philadelphia. Between them, they caused a national crime wave. Yeah, exactly. Everywhere in between. Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's like, look, I'm even with somebody who's willing to say, I think that sometimes in the left, our instinct is to like downplay worries about crime in ways that aren't helpful. I think it's like a real concern for a lot of working class people. And that's like, I think Eric Levitz wrote something good about this. We actually had him on to talk about it a while back. You know, I would argue that you can acknowledge it's a real problem without adopting your enemy's solutions to that problem. Again, Norway, much more lenient criminal justice system, much lower crime rates. So, you know, I do think there are economic solutions to this problem, but like, you can even say, let's say for the sake of argument, the billionaires, you know, didn't play that big a role. I think they probably did, but they have let's say they didn't. You know, that all that was driving this was just like, you know, mass fears about crime. Well, okay, what are you going to say about that? If you're going to like go on a national, you know, cable news show, like, and you're going to comment on that, what are you going to say about it? Like, here's one thing that she could say, right? Tulsi the progressive, right? She could say, well, this is a tragedy because then maybe it really shows that if we just have these more reasonable, you know, criminal justice policies, or maybe she even has specific criticisms of Boudin, like we could get into them, right? But like, you know, that like having like more lenient criminal justice policies without doing anything about the underlying root causes makes you vulnerable to backlash. And so, of course, since, you know, a local prosecutor, it's not like they can do anything about expanding the American welfare state. So this is like maybe an understandable tragedy about what happened. But instead, she's not doing any of that, right? She's just like feeding into the Fox News scare grandma narrative about, you know, like liberal prosecutors and crime.
Yeah, I mean, well, what's interesting about this now is because there's something to contradict what they're saying, which is like Eric Adams has been in office now. New Yorkers do not support the way he's responded to this. He's cracked out massively, and guess what? Do not feel safer on the subways since Eric Adams. I've seen cops. I've seen cops patrol trains one time since actually a couple times, but one time sticks out since this new presence on the train on the rail. Since they like let the guy who shot people just waltz out until he turned himself in. But it was like late at night and some delivery guy had his bike on. It was one of those electronic bikes, and maybe you're not supposed to have those on the train, but he was clearly taking it home at the end of a night, right? And some cops get on, and like I'm just like listening to my headphones. I don't expect anything because there's no problems on the train. There's like eight people on the train entirely, and all of a sudden like I hear shouting, and it's the cops harassing this guy until he gets off the train. So like that's what like keeping us safe is now, is to harass delivery guys at the end of the night. And again, it's like all these things that need to be addressed through like, I mean, things in the fucking Joker movie, right? Like we need to offer mental health services. And
yes,
right? Like this isn't a mystery what the problem is here. It's not a bunch of cops going through with their hands in their belts, like looking people up and down, making sure they're orderly or some shit. Like, and I also think people are right to say that the perception of things being more dangerous, even though like certain metrics in certain cities might have gone up, I do think it's the visibility of the homeless people. And there's that again, like that's not a solution that like you do, that they don't need handcuffs, right? They need to be housed.
No, exactly. I mean, I think that I mean, I think the way it's played out is awful. And you know, I actually think, you know, our friend, Atticus Berry got a lot of flack for pointing out some like correct aspects of this, you know, at the time that a lot of this argument was going on, you know. But I mean, I think that you know, I think the problem is that like there is this sort of like awful neoliberal centrism where it's like, okay, we're not going to like provide people with housing and mental health counseling and addiction services and all the things that people actually need who are like suffering all this human misery. But we also won't arrest them. We'll just, like let them sleep in the park forever, right? That's that's not a very good solution, and it's one that like tends to, in fact, the longer you do that, the more support builds up for like the right wing carceral solution. But like also that just arresting people for the crime of like not having a place to sleep is
The horrible thing is it's like it's stuck in this debate between like two sides that are arguing like what we do with just absolute not enough resources. Like, do we just start arresting people and forcing them to go into places? Do we try to make like encampments safer somehow? And it's like, as long as real estate and and honestly, not just the real estate industry, the entire like value to human beings of middle class people in general is tied up in their housing, right? And like that contradiction of like making sure that investment stays nice and dear, so people can like retire off of it, and also we need to get people into houses. Like it's a contradiction that's like it's just like there's no solution to it except just to like massively build houses and put people in them.
Well, it kind of reminds me of how like whatever president is in office gets credit for whatever economy like he happens to preside over. Where I feel like solving these criminal issues, I mean, there's shocks like the pandemic that can cause crime to rise, but the point is that it would take like a very lengthy approach, right, to actually solve crime at the root, because you're talking about change over generations. But then who happens to be in office, like whether it's Eric Adams or a reformer, is the one that gets gets blamed or gets the credit. So it's hard to have like an intelligible conversation with it, because you're right, if there's a lot of crime happening in your neighborhood, you want changes now, right? So I get that, but it's
no, that's
I feel
true.
Like the wrong people are getting credit. I
would point I think that's for sure. I would also point out again, I mean, I think you're right, of course. I mean, that there are some things that are like going to be very slow intergenerational changes, even in the best scenario. I mean, I think that's true. But I also think it's true there's a lot you could do that would like have a big impact on the crime rate, like immediately, right? Like jobs programs, right? I mean, is an obvious example of something that's like going to have an immediate impact on the crime rate. Or like if you don't, if like, the kind of thing that you're concerned about is like a homeless guy shooting up in the park, then like provided housing and also substance abuse counseling, right? That should be part of that, right? I mean, like those are things that actually will,
well, I mean,
start to get some traction pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned like Anna and Jason also makes this point, like things like safe injection sites that get popular, like those are good, but they are not panaceas. Like it won't just. You need like you need a lot more. I think like I also think like campaigning for those things is absolutely right on.
Sure.
but like there's a. I mean, there's a. And
but there's also just something horrible and depressing about the idea that that's like, the limits of anybody's imagination, right? I mean, that it's like, oh well, I don't know, you're going to be. I guess we'll just try to make this like just horrified symptom of social breakdown. We'll try to make it like a little clearer. So
I guess I was thinking the change in the crime rate is slow because we never actually do anything other than like actually like input these things in America. So at least I'm thinking about New York City.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are some changes that would be. I think there are certain aspects of crime problems that would be very slow to change, but I also think there are things that would like. I think there are things that would make a difference right away. Would be my take. Okay, we've got. So I want to speed through Tulsi so we could get to Tim. So let's. Let's see. First, we have, I believe, a clip from Tulsi Gabbard's speech at the Conservative Political Action Committee. Do we have that, Jake?
No, I think I'm missing.
I have here. I might be able to find it in the. Video clips. Let me see. So it is. Yeah, here we go. Here is Tulsi speaking at CPAC.
My fellow Americans, young boy, I dreamed of being a baseball. But tonight I say we must move forward, not backward, upward, not forward, and always twirling, twirling, twirling towards freedom.
Okay.
I promise that was a bit me saying that I didn't know what you were talking about. Not that I completely forgot about the joke that we 100% discussed. But anyway, go on.
Yeah. No, that is just what Tulsi's speech at CPAC reminded me of. I watched the entirety of it while I was working out earlier today, and like 90% of it was stuff that might as well be twirling towards freedom. She did get into a little bit of substance at the end. There is we lost Matt.
Someone said Matt is not amused, but he was amused. He was just frozen, I think. So he'll probably be back he'll probably be back. He was cracking up, but I'm sure he'll be back in a second.
Yeah, he actually was, but yeah. But yeah, that is what Tulsi's CPAC speech, when I watched it this morning, reminded me of. For the most part, there's a lot of stuff about God in there. There's a detailed explanation of the meaning of the word aloha. There's a lot of stuff about why freedom is good. Then at the end, there's a little bit of cancel culture stuff, and there's some stuff about free speech. But the point, just want to make sure, actually, before I do want to make sure we get Matt back for this, because I do want to be in on this part. So I'm going to stick on the intermission music for a second, then we're just going to see if we can figure out the Matt issue, and I'm going to be right back. All right.
Not that, guys.
No problem. So I think you froze up sometime during the Tulsi CPAC clip, but I have. But the point is that most of it, of course, that's not Tulsi. That's former President Bill Clinton. But the point is that I watched the entirety of that speech. Just think, okay, maybe Tulsi at CPAC, maybe this was stuff we can find. 80 to 90% of it is just fluff, right? It's nothing. It's God is good, freedom is good, America is good, stuff like that. The only the policy stuff is there's like a little bit of stuff about cancel culture and online censorship at the end, and a little bit of culture war stuff. She kind of refers to the parents in Loudoun County, so that's like a reference to like CRT things. And I guess I just want to make 2 points about this and then throw to you, right? One is that I think that what's not there is maybe as important as what is there, because okay, not the CRT stuff, but like some of the rest of that, fine, right? Freedom is good, yay. The toxicity is bad, whatever, all fine. But if you're gonna make a big thing about free speech, and frankly, especially if you're talking to Republicans, it might be nice to challenge them a little bit with by talking about, stuff like, without getting into the soap opera of Loudoun County and and whatever, defending everything that happened there, but like stuff like the CRT bans in general, which are obviously a huge attempt at, at shutting down discussion of ideas that they find dangerous. Stuff like the Republican state legislatures that have passed laws to go after the boycotts, divestment, and sanctions movement, the Palestine solidarity movement, to boycott Israel. Stuff like stuff like the laws that say you could run over a protester with your car, right? That all seems those all seem like important free speech issues that she's not talking about, which I think is telling, right? Because she's it seems like whatever her official politics is on a day-to-day basis, right? She's slotted into something of a role here. And then the other point is that, without I don't know, I listened to a podcast episode or two about the Loudoun County stuff. I don't know. I couldn't reconstruct in very great detail, what happened there, but abstracted from that a little bit, the fact that, she's sort of doing this culture war signaling about on the theme of libs are crazy and, social justice stuff is crazy. And she seems to do a lot of that these days, right? So I think we had Andy grab the graphic of her tweets from today. I think today or yesterday, because they just announced this. So she says this good step forward. FINA, swimming's world governing body, just voted to ban most trans quote women unquote from competition. Just so dickish. All right, but unfortunately, men who transitioned before age I don't know why before age 12 is in quotation marks, right? That just seems
yeah, you're spamming the scare quote a little bit.
Will be allowed to compete. This may encourage boys to quote transition unquote before they are old enough to make such dangerous life-altering decision. FINA should allow the fair and safest policy. All caps, no biological men should be allowed to compete against biological women, period. Mm-hmm. And this just kind of seems like, okay, before talking about the politics of it, I think just in the sort of more principled question, whatever you think about the finer details of exactly how, this decision, or if there's a more trans-inclusive policy that'd be better, and what do you think the hormone requirements should be and all that stuff, none of which I can claim any sort of expertise about, and I'm not going to try to weigh in on any of that stuff, right? But whatever you think about the issue, just the fact that she even got what she wanted on this, but she's still no, not good enough, right? We need this to be absolute. There cannot be anyone, right, who has the wrong chromosomes who's ever doing this. I don't care if they have no physical disadvantages. I will come no physical advantages because they, didn't go through puberty as a boy. That there's no kind of competitive issue at all. I'll still come up with a reason it's bad. So the first thing is just a principle. This just seems really cruel to me, right? So that's the first half, right? But then the political half is, even if her positions on stuff like Medicare for all and all that were better than they are, right? We went over that earlier. They're not actually that great, but even if they're better than they are, I think that I sort of think you can't do both. In other words, because what's the function of stuff like this for conservatives, right? Why are they pushing this, right? I don't know. Maybe I'm a cynical person. I don't really believe that every conservative in the country has developed an authentic burning passion for athletic integrity in girls' sports, right? I don't think that
maybe Joe Rogan. I think he actually cares, but
I think Rogan might actually care. Yeah, I think that's actually something you might get excited about. But I think your average conservative politico, I do not think they care, right? I don't think before this issue came up they ever spent a second thinking about women's sports, maybe at all ever, right? So why do they push this stuff? Why do they push any of this stuff, right? Because it's well, look, they can't, if you're whatever, pick your favorite conservative, right? If you're, Charlie Kirk or, you're, whatever, right? Just pick one. You can't exactly, and you want to say you represent ordinary people against elites and all this stuff. You can't talk about healthcare, right? You can't talk about wages, can't talk about any of that stuff, right? Because then it gets very obvious very quickly, right, that you are in fact a servant of elites. So you have to change the subject, all of this, right? You have to change the subject to competitive rules and girls swimming and stuff like that. And it just I guess it just seems to me that if you're aiding and abetting that shell game, right, where instead of talking about the stuff that conservatives don't want to talk about, we're going to get everybody riled up about stuff like this, then it sort of doesn't matter what your official position is on anything else.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a big part of that that's true. I mean, the GOP basically put the bigots on the bench once the defensive marriage act failed, and they realized like, oh crap, we're gonna lose this fight. And this is just the new way for them to like sort of like put them back in the game a little bit. Okay, all right, you can't just go after like the gay guy at work anymore. You have to go after drag queens and trans people, right? And then we can play you, right? Like that's the role we have for you in the game now. I also there's a point though that I'm taking from a trans author, Sean Fay, I believe is the name, and she writes that when you think about the government should, whether it's abortion, whether it's transitioning in terms of gender, the government should empower you to have bodily autonomy in these respects. And it's the same way that the government should empower you to just frankly have healthcare in general. Right. And and the through line in all these arguments is that you can't trust people. You can't even really trust doctors. We need to get legislation involved here and control the plebs and their crazy requests from this doctor system, whether it's they want to transition or they want, to get screened for cancer.
Yeah, no, I completely agree about the bodily autonomy, issue, right? I mean, I think that I think that like some of the edge cases about swimming and stuff like that, whatever you say about that, there's, that's a whole rabbit hole of itself. But I mean, I think this sort of general issue about like, should you be able to, should you be able to do what you want with your body? I mean, if you, of course you should. Right? I mean, and I think there's also a very basic civil rights issue about, I mean, when it comes to, discrimination in general, which, it's also, when somebody like Tulsi, I don't know, I'd like to see her, I don't know, maybe I get a chance, although I think given the topic, it probably won't come up, but I'd like to see her quizzed about, it's like, okay, I mean, you're putting like, women in scare quotes and all this stuff, right? I mean, like, do you actually think like anti-discrimination laws should generally include, should generally include gender identity? I mean, this is because that seems, I mean, there is a much more basic issue there. But I also think like, so that's like the principled issue. I mean, I think the political issue is just, okay, if it wasn't this, it would be something else, right? I mean, like if there was if there were no whatever, Leah Thomas didn't exist, whatever, like if there were no trans people in sports stories to get people riled up about, they would find something cultural to get people excited about because they need to find something like that always.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Let's do Tim Pool. So let's load this up a little bit. So we have do we? I guess the place to start with Tim would be the clip where he's describing his politics.
People don't seem to know what a centrist is, and you'll end up with articles accusing me of being a right-wing commentator whose political views are on the left. It's like, yes, have you considered that's what a centrist is? I think for me, the challenge is that most people see everything as either left or right, and while idealistically I'm probably kind of far left, but realistically, like trying to actually accomplish policies that move us forward, I'm probably a moderate left.
Yeah, I mean, it's so Tim Bonto's most recent video on Tim Pool is called Fence Sitter. And he plays a whole bunch of clips where Tim Pool says, yeah, I'm a milquetoast fence sitter, and he just owns it. And it's infuriating because he's not. He tells the right wing what they want to hear as a centrist, basically in that. But I do have to say, like, especially seeing him deliver it there, it's smart marketing. Like it's really smart, and it annoys me that like I would love to be like, I'm a centrist. I'm not for Hillary or Donald Trump. I'm here to hate Jeff Bezos, and it's like that would actually be like, I'm from the center, right? And it's like that branding. Tim Pool, I don't think he how do I want to phrase this? I don't think he exerts himself a whole lot in terms of the understanding department. But as far as like finding a lane, like I think he's really found one with that, like that, because it is so like, and I don't think a whole lot of people are. I think a lot of like his audience is sort of in on the joke when it comes to that stuff, but like. I gotta say, like, as far as like compared to like Crowder, who like is always gonna have like a limit on his ceiling, because like nobody just wants like a nasty guy like that. I mean, certain like young men do mainly, but to Tim Pool, like for a guy like, I mean, the first bump steer we did on Left Reckoning was for Tim Pool, because. And then that's like, a bump steer, you don't want to be led in the wrong direction. And it's like that he can do that. And I think Jordan Peterson's a little bit like this too, because they don't, and because Weinstein obviously too, and Tulsi, I guess this is a theme, but like, I think Tim is actually, he's probably the best at it maybe at this point.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, I think it's, so when he says that he's far left in his whatever, in theory, whatever it was he said,
idealism,
and moderate left in practice. I mean, we did a whole segment on this last week, so I mean, I'm not going to I will bear the lead here. I mean, like, he voted for Trump, right? I mean, like, that doesn't. It doesn't seem either moderate or far left.
Because Democrats went so far left with Joe Biden.
Yeah, Biden was too much for him, right? He voted for Trump. That's
the nothing will fundamentally change guy. That was too much for Tim Pool.
Any moderate, anyone who's moderately left would run away from Joe Biden.
But you know what's fun is to try to occasionally these guys, I don't know if Tim Pool's done it, but like Madison Cawthorn, when they have to like praise Joe Manchin, Blake Masters also did this. There's like this odd thing, because it's like you don't want to just admit like, oh, you're the same thing. Basically, it's like, oh, I'm gonna do a crazy thing, and I like, what do you really disagree with Joe Manchin about? Like I mean, that it's okay to sit with Democrats at lunch. Like, that's basically it.
Yeah, no, exactly. And if you watch, kind of the point of the segment last week was like, okay, so, we went back, and since the Thanos trolley problem stuff had come up again in the context of the Matt Binder debate, and Binder basically said, I don't like philosophy, I'm not gonna do that, but we like philosophy, so we took a look at that, and it seems, I don't think Tim Pool really understands what the trolley problem is. Whatever, skip all that, right? They have the basic point is that the original context which it came up was talking about lesser evil voted, and Tim's position at that point was that if you vote for like a centrist Democrat to get a right-wing Republican out of office, you are, because you're supporting evil against evil, you might as well be pushing people onto trolley tracks, right? You might as well be Thanos snapping his fingers and eliminating half the human race. Like, it's
that is what we call voter blaming of the most ludicrous kind. Like, I really like that. That is so silly.
But I mean, it is silly, but also like somehow he went from that to I'm going to vote for Trump because like he'll create jobs or whatever he said, like there are too many riots and Trump will restore order, right? I mean, that's his position, which again just doesn't, I don't want to beat this dead horse too much, but I mean that just doesn't seem very left wing to me. Like that seems downright right wing. On that same point, we have a clip of Tim Pool. I think this was Rogan's previous set. The curtain behind him was a different color, but anyway, we have Tim Pool on Rogan talking about why he doesn't like socialists.
And assume, I think there's some truth in that. that there's people who have money they didn't earn, and they're leeches on the system. They make money from money. They've never done anything in their lives.
Sure.
They're arrogant.
Sure, there's a lot of people like that.
Right, but when you then take that generalization and apply it to anyone who has money or everyone, and you take it to a dark place.
Exactly.
When I first started, entering the public space in terms of news and politics, I was at Occupy Wall Street, and before I had any notoriety, I was being heralded. They called me a good example of what's wrong with the system. Here's Tim Pool, a high school dropout, mixed race guy, and here he is just sleeping in a dirt park using his phone to tell the real stories of the world. After I got featured in Time magazine, what did they say? Tim Pool is white and he was born with a silver spoon, which is not true. It's absolutely not true. But the socialist types, the activists, couldn't accept that I had jumped the class system, I guess. Their view of the world is rigid, that the rich people keep the poor down, there's no chance for upward mobility, and that's not the case.
That's interesting. There is a study by, I believe, a Harvard economist named Raj Chetty. This was for like 5 years ago when I was researching for Vice News. There is, class mobility, income mobility in America. It is significantly less than the mobility in Canada, for instance. So yeah, we have it here. It's fine. Interestingly, some of the few places with mobility equal to Canada was my hometown area of North Dakota, and that's mainly because charter schools don't super exist there, and all public schools are really nice, and there isn't a huge amount outside of between reservation, white and indigenous, a whole lot of income stratification. So that's so yeah, I mean, we all have this who is that, Horatio Alger, or it's like, come on, we've been doing this for 100 years. This stuff was 50 years old when like my grandparents were born.
Yeah, I mean right. So yeah, I mean, if you actually really, if upward mobility is your big issue, then but actually, yeah, they'd have good schools, having free college, right? Would all be good for that, right? Because there'd be more people, more people going to college and competing for the better off jobs. But also, like, I guess it just seems like Tim just fundamentally doesn't understand what the point of socialism is, right? Because like his characterization of socialists is that they think that like all rich people, they think that like rich people all don't deserve it, but they don't get that some of them have worked hard and they do deserve it, right? And they think that and they think that there's no upward mobility, but there is some upward mobility, and that all just seems totally beside the point to me, right? I mean, in terms of like why, certainly, really anybody with even a vaguely left-wing critique of economic inequality, never mind anybody who's actually a socialist, like why they have a problem with that stuff, right? I mean, that it's like, so what you must be saying is that like the best and the brightest aren't rising to the top fast enough, because that's like the only objection I can imagine to our economic system. Rather than like we're actually objecting to the fact that like most people, right, are going to stay where I mean, even if there's lots of upward mobility, right, most people by definition aren't going to enjoy it, right? I mean, any hierarchical system, there are only so many slots at the top, right? I mean, most people, I mean, like presumably, I mean, if you're a socialist, you actually care about all of the people who are not upwardly mobile, right? Not just because some of them are special people who deserve to be upwardly mobile, but because you think everybody is significant and you want a more egalitarian society that's going to be better off for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky balance. How do you weigh, on the one hand, a lot of people not getting enough to eat and feed their kids, and on the other hand, a lot of people not being entirely fair to rich people and thinking like overly negative about them? Politics is tricky.
Yeah, exactly. I actually talked about this last time I was on Left Reckoning, but I mean, I don't really, I think meritocracy is bad even as an ideal, right? I mean, I don't think that you deserve to have a good life if you're like particularly smart and talented and everybody else doesn't. Right. I mean, like,
when you tie, It's like okay, if it comes down to like trophies, okay, sure. When it comes down to like, can you live a materially sound life? Like, I think no, like that's not the meritocracy there.
Are you saying that Steph Curry does not deserve his NBA championship? Like he worked very hard to get there, and he shouldn't be revoked, which is what leftists would want. But yeah, I mean, it's also like it's kind of a really, I feel like, deeply misleading, unserious straw man, because obviously you could find a leftist that is like all rich people are evil inherent. You know what I mean? You could find like a caricature of any viewpoint, and basically he's using that to critique the entire argument. But really, like, you're not really going to find any serious thinkers or writers that like are Marxists at all and say that it's all about your character, like be essentialist like that, rather than like the structure that people are in. So it's really shifty, but it's effective, I guess, like to what you were saying.
Although he can find one leftist that thinks all rich people make money with money. Like that is what I think. That's like sort of the definitional thing of for me is like qualifying someone as a rich person or whatever.
Well,
like
yeah. I mean, making money with money is right. I mean, it's that's MCM, right? Money, commodity, money, from capital. But yeah, I mean, I just think like, look, do you have to think that every member of the feudal aristocracy was a terrible person to think that feudalism is bad? I mean, like, I don't, it doesn't seem like it, right? I mean, like, that just seems like a separate question, right? Like, I don't, what we think of the individual moral character of participants in a system versus what we think about the system, So, okay, that'd be my critique of Tim Pool on socialism, but we do need to move on to James O'Keefe. So just to finish up Pool, we've been talking a lot about Tim's like values and political goals, but just to finish up with Pool, do we have the clip of Tim as a political prognosticator? Let's see if I can find this. This is like the last Tim Pool what I sent you. We might not have gotten it.
Yeah, I think we might be missing that one. We have a tweet.
Okay, if we can just screen share. Yeah, we can just screen share. Okay, well that's not the. So we've got a tweet with an embedded video in it. We could, while we've got this up, I should say, so this is Tim Pool blaming the Uvalde on defund the police, which is amazing because they actually recently, like, the Uvalde Police Department was never defunded, right? That's the big thing. In fact, they got this.
Quite the opposite.
Yeah, exactly. They actually got this massive grant, $532,000 from the governor, and another $435K to the school district. Every level of policing and security in Uvalde was being funded quite well. That is not the issue here, and certainly had not had their funding decrease. And that's just him being a little dishonest, I think, or at the very least, not bothering to check before he tweeted. But yeah, okay. If you don't have it, I can just screen share it, Jake. Let me just link grab it. So here we go. Share screen. All right. So this is, as I said, the Tim as a electoral
49 state
prognosticator.
We may be looking at a Mondale-Reagan type scenario where Trump landslides 49 states.
Like Tim predicted a 49 state landslide for Trump.
Haha, Tim was wrong. Of hypothetical and hypotheticals. I'll tell you what I think is going to happen. I think they're cheating. I think Trump's going to landslide. I think Trump would have had a landslide no matter what. I think the polls are fake. And I think what's happening now is Trump's going to win, and they're going to say, but he didn't really win. I think Donald Trump is looking at a potential landslide. I'm not exaggerating. There's been periods where in the past where I was like, Trump's going to landslide for these reasons. And then there was some negative things that happened. And I'm like, wow, this is starting to look bad for Trump, actually. Now I'm starting to be more convinced that Trump is on track for a landslide. Notably, he's going after New York. Boom, there it is. The Democrats didn't buy any of this ad space. Why? Donald Trump's going to win. Trump is going to win. I'm convinced, absolutely convinced. I think what's going to happen is that Donald Trump is going to win cleanly on election night. And I think they knew Trump was going to win. I think they knew their polling was breaking. I think they knew that Trump voters were lying about who they supported because of peer pressure and pressure from, mainstream media. Biden's not campaigning. I think Kamala and Biden might be throwaway candidates. They know they're going to get steamrolled in the election. And we may see a 49 state landslide, maybe a 50 state landslide. That'd be amazing.
Well, that would be amazing.
You know what, Ben? This is dishonest editing. After all of those clips, he's like, "But can you imagine if I was really like that?" And then his co-host just cracked up, and it was really.
I mean, what's amazing about that is you can tell why you would like that if you were like a Trump fan, but like,
sure,
wasn't like identified with the Republicans or everything. Like, oh damn, this is fucking catnip. I also think it's like interesting just how well that coheres to like a Jan 6 that's overturned the election count style thing. Like, I wonder how much of Tim's audience is sort of like towed in those waters, or like was led to like believe things like. I mean, there's plenty to be said about what Tim himself said about the election, but I mean, you'd be gassed up and not be expecting Joe Biden to win if you watch that guy.
Yeah, no, this is very true. Yeah, I mean, whatever. I guess I guess he did say, "Wouldn't that be amazing?" And and hypothetically, that would be amazing if that thing that there was never any chance that would happen had happened.
York.
So there you go.
He might win New York, guys. Yeah,
exactly. Which I don't think. I don't think even if we did a poll of like people who were like actual participants in the riot on Jan 6, I don't think any of them think that Trump won New York. So, okay. So last but certainly not least, we have James O'Keefe, and I want to make a really specific point about James because, Tulsi and Tim, because they both have a certain political ambiguity about them, so we spent a lot of time kind of trying to ferret out like where they stand. James, I don't think that's an interesting question. I think that I think he is very comfortable with his conservatism. But I do want to make a really specific point about his politics as they address the actual subject that we're supposed to be debating, right? So the title of the the panel is media manipulation. What's the source of the problem? Which of course one source of the problem is James O'Keefe, but beyond that, that's it's also if you're concerned, right, about manipulation of media, meaning either like false things get promoted or legitimate perspectives get shut down, or you're not you're not free to discuss things, then it seems to me that you really need to be talking about a couple things, but the one that's going to be most relevant for where we're going right here is why is it that like if you're really concerned about about free speech, and not just the speech of like people who own big media platforms, but like anybody's speech, right? Anybody's ability to like speak their mind and not suffer bad consequences from it. Then like any normal person, assuming that we're talking about a society like the contemporary United States, where you're not just gonna like be put in prison or whatever, saying the wrong thing. Like any normal person, like what's your number one concern about like something that would be bad that happens to you if people get like really pissed off about something you say? Like what would you get fired, of course, right? So, okay. So given that, you would think that if you were really concerned about this issue, what you would want is a society where it's hard to fire people, right? Where there's some sort of like process that you go through. You can't be just fired arbitrarily, right? You get some due process. People have to really prove that you did something bad enough. You have to specify, perhaps in some sort of contract, which things you can and can't be fired for. So, Jake, what would an institution be that would allow people to achieve these things at their workplace?
A labor union. I was trying to think of a joke, but I couldn't even think
yeah. No, I mean, a labor union, right? I mean, like, so if this guy is really serious, right, about free speech, you'd think he'd be super duper pro union, because I mean that's the biggest reason that, like, that's the biggest consequence, people face right now. If they do the wrong thing, say the wrong thing, right, they can be fired. So you'd think that he would be super duper pro union, want everybody to unionize, right? So you can't fire anybody, right? Without having real protections and, due process, and like a union rep who can represent you in that process to make sure you don't get railroaded. And yet, we have actually pretty early in the saga of Project Veritas, which you're going to be able to tell as soon as we start watching these clips, because there is I'm not going to spoil it, but there is a pretty dated cultural reference that these videos center around. Pretty early in the saga of Project Veritas, they spent a lot of time going after specifically teachers' unions in New Jersey. So let me just see if we can give you the first. So we have. So do we have the volume 1 or whatever, the first of these?
1, 2, 3, 4. Legislators owe us 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. NJEA is really great. When we say new, you say Jersey. New Jersey. New Jersey.
Get ready. The following is a paid program for teachers' unions gone wild. What happens when you take the upper echelon of teachers and union leaders in New Jersey?
This is for the upper echelon leaders of the NJEA.
And bring them together into one lavish hotel? It can only add up to one thing. One wild and crazy NJEA leadership conference. Get ready to get down with some dirty teachers who will school you on how to have a good time.
Ever gone to the NJEA?
No, it's my fair share of teaching.
You get so much free shit. So what's
That's why we're laughing here. We're like, ha ha ha, playing video games and they're
dying. I would just say good if teachers have nice conferences. Like, what you want? Like Bitcoin scammers to be the only people that can rent out a conference center? Like, I think that's fine. Just to note, like, yeah. So James O'Keefe went to Rutgers, and his first sort of stunt was complaining to the administration as an Irish person that Lucky Charms was offensive. And that got and the administration actually listened to him until they realized that he was filming them. You're like, can you turn that camera off? He's like, oh, I don't know. And then that was it. That went viral enough for him to like get picked up by Breitbart, so he could, actually, Ben, you should go dressed as a pimp to the first speech.
Yeah,
just show up with a cane.
Yeah, he. In fact, James O'Keefe, shamefully, was a philosophy major at Rutgers, but that was about 10 years before I got there. So I had no role in educating James. So just for the record, but yeah, I mean, this is like. I mean, honestly, I think it's kind of funny that like it's the lavish hotel, but they're trying to come up with like some of the like, oh, what are they doing on, your, whatever, inflated salaries that are paid for these union dues that are paid for them to rent a hotel for the weekend. They're playing video games.
Like, yeah, I was all ready to be like, yeah, sometimes, you know, maybe sometimes money is misspent. I was ready to backpedal, but I was like, they're at a conference. Like that is the most basic thing an organization could have.
You couldn't get someone doing a bump of coke. Like, I mean,
well, hold that thought. Actually, but
Well,
yeah,
actually,
I mean, just
I want to say one.
the video games is just such a weak example, right? It does not cost anybody very much money. But go on.
They're playing Papa Shot on our dime.
Yeah.
You know, it's they get more and more tokens off of our tax money.
O'Keefe's somebody who's gotten multiple people fired with his journalism for whether it's like the pimp thing or the like faking I think a kidnapping thing that anyway, yeah, that's all in Tim Bonto's video as well.
Fair enough. So yeah, and there is well, actually, since you mentioned it, we can't skip ahead to the drug one. So let's
yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead and do that.
Maybe this is not how you think. This is how I think. I'm a teacher. I'm not driving around with fucking weed in my car, but I'll have it delivered to my house.
And now, I should say that later in the clip, he actually does offer him some coke. So that is actually true, right? That he brought some coke to the conference and he did some. I will say, you know, maybe it's just that I lived in Miami for 6.5 years, and you know, but that doesn't strike me as a capital crime. But
no, I mean, I said that because like that would be the sort of thing where I'd feel like at least you could come home with that. I mean, it is a conference; people are going to bring party drugs. Like, what world do people live in? Scandal, like adults are adults.
Can you believe that teachers in their personal time when they're not with students partake in like illegal drugs? It's
yeah.
Well, that's the thing that most hit me about that clip. That's why I wanted that specific part, right? Even it's not the most salacious part that comes after he offers him the coke, you know. Which again, as you said, it's a conference. People are going to bring drugs, right? I mean, this is, if you've ever been to a conference of anything, right? You know, that's. But like, also, you know, I guarantee you at CPAC there were people who, you know, showed up with that, right? You know, that's like, there's no doubt whatsoever.
I mean, Kudlow was there.
That's true. But like, what I really like about that clip though is like just I mean, like, look, if they were just doing the bump of coke, whatever, I still think it'd be silly to freak out about it. But like, they're making an issue, right? They felt the need to include that clip, right? That like this heavily edited thing that he's saying, and he even says in the clip, "Look, it's not like I'm bringing weed to school with me, but sure, right? I have to deliver to my house, right? It's like, yes. So when I am not at work, right, then like most American adults at some point or another, I'll smoke weed, right? Like, let's
exactly.
Okay, like,
yeah,
that's. You know,
I mean, the paranoia about teachers is wild. Like, I mean, just to bring Tulsi back up again, like Tulsi's not only doing the ultra on the like no transitioning thing, she was also doing no sex education. You need to be 18. So she's going like back to the 80s. Like, not only like should we like not, you know, be very careful about what we say in front of first graders. Not fucking senior high school. That's too early for Tulsi Gabbard to be like talking about sex in schools. That's just between you and the parents.
No, well, okay, the parents, fair enough. I was going to say, you know, you get the birds and the bees at your college orientation, right? You know, that's like nothing before that.
Yeah, it's stop at buzzed was my orientation, and this is what sex is, and don't do it. We're all there to learn what sex is, freshman orientation, but. Yeah, I mean, is it kind of like it's like a loophole if you're trying to feint to be libertarian? It's like kind of a loophole where you're like, you know, kids aren't people yet, so we can like, you know, decide what's right for them, and that's kind of like where we get to like flex more of our authoritarian impulses. I don't know. I mean, I don't know, but I don't know as much about O'Keefe. Would he be like, oh, I'm kind of like a libertarian, or would he be like, yeah, no, I actually like, you know, think that we should be legislating like what happens inside people's homes and stuff like that?
That's a good question, actually.
Yeah, that's a little hard to say. I mean, I think that like he's so focused on sort of finding progressives doing things that he finds outrageous, right? That like I don't know. I don't know if there's a good statement. I don't know that there's a good James O'Keefe equivalent of Tim Pool explaining that he's a centrist because he's far left, but he does whatever he was trying to say, right? Like I don't think there's even that for James O'Keefe, or if there is, I haven't found it. If anybody knows what it is, please send it to me before Saturday. But I just
I agree with Mr. Slaw there. Yeah, I don't think he gives a fuck. I think he's like, he wants to find embarrassing stuff that gets him attention. And what do Republicans do with it? Like, as long as he keeps getting invited and getting bankrolled, I imagine that's all he gives.
What's funny about that clip? You're saying it's embarrassing. Imagine like showing that to the average student. Like if it's a high school student and you see that your teacher is like doing coke on the weekend, you'd be like, this is the least embarrassing.
Oh my God. Yeah, Mr. Loebel's awesome.
Exactly. Well, I do have one thing about the legislation, but actually, I guess this is as good a time as any. I will say that. So I had a feeling, we were like prepping this episode, I had a feeling there'd be a bunch of teachers union stuff, just because that seemed like that would be something that he would not be able to stay away from, and I was right. But so I looked at the website of Project Veritas, where that has a bunch of these clips, and on there they have this little thing. The structure of this kind of reeks of like, this is for donors, right? So they can kind of see the results they're getting for their work, right? That there's like, here's the clip, here's an explanation of what's going on in the clip, and here's the victories that we had as a result of it, right? Like at the end.
It's like your Grubhub driver taking a video of your delivered order.
yeah, exactly. So, and in the results thing, they did brag about Chris Christie signing a bill that weakened tenure for teachers in New Jersey, that you have to do 4 years instead of 3 years before you get the due process protections, and it's easier to fire people at various points. So so they do see this as a victory. They see this as a good thing, right? So that is one legislation thing I see. But I also want, okay, so do we have so let's just do the other O'Keefe ones quickly, because I think it all makes the point here, right? So I think we have like a little part 2 within this video, if we got that. So let's do that first.
And watch out, no one can stop this wild party, not even New Jersey's Governor Chris Christie.
Let's have whiskey and get a little misty. Join me now and slander Chris Christie. Here comes Christie with a whipping stick. What are we going to do? Kick him in the toolbox!
Everybody wants to, take this guy out one way or the other. You know what I mean?
The education system, it's not good with the current the governor. It's
the whole thing seems like it's a mess.
You couldn't make it out there, but the subtitle said Christie is a fuck. So there's a lot of, and then we have the Christmas one, which is pretty much more of the same. If we've got that.
From the guys who brought you Teachers Unions Gone Wild.
'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house.
The holiday season is a time for giving.
Not a creature was stirring.
A time for joy.
Not even a mouse.
A time for peace.
The governor cut the budget?
Yes.
What did he base that on?
He's a bastard. He's a bastard.
He's what?
I just called the governor a bastard, and I don't know who you are.
I'm sorry.
I'm very uncomfortable talking to you. Teachers Gone Wild in New Jersey.
I'm really sorry.
That's okay. I'm just not comfortable. Teachers Gone Wild, and there's a gentleman out there in the public quoting people.
It's happy holidays from the Teachers Union. You can expect the presents under their trees will be plentiful.
The stockings were hung by the chimney with care.
Because under 10-year policy for union teachers, it's always Christmas in New Jersey.
But how long will it take me to get tenure in just a...
3 years and a day.
3 years and a day. Do you mean you're completely secure if you got tenure?
Yes, completely. Unless,
like beat up a kid.
You've actually got to beat a kid up, in other words.
And in keeping with the holiday spirit, these union teachers have some warm season's greetings for Governor Chris Christie.
Yeah, he's a nut. He cut Montclair $4 million last year.
Oh
no, he's a liar.
Really?
Oh yeah, he's a liar.
I'd hate to be in his family.
With our new governor, he's cutting back on a lot of our resources.
I mean, is he that crazy?
Yeah.
Just
He's
complain.
anti-education.
We hate him.
Really?
Oh yeah.
You hate him?
He has been on, in our opinion, a vendetta against teachers. We don't know what a teacher ever did to him along his life.
That's why our governor hates us. He just hates the teachers union.
We have like 2.5 more years of him.
I feel uncomfortable so far just by virtue of my surname. And my name is actually Kevin Christie. And every time I No,
Say
why?
no more. Say no more.
Why?
Just make sure you tell me no relation.
Really? I mean...
Make sure you tell everybody no relation.
No, I'm no relation, I promise you.
There arose such a clatter. I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter.
Right.
There's probably something in it for him. His big push is for charter schools, and charter schools can make a profit, and then he's got business connections.
Well, he's really pushing to move up in the political world.
If you follow the money, it's like somewhere the money will be coming back. You can make a profit, like he just hooked in with Cory Booker down in Newark.
Right.
And with that Facebook
Also
donation
true.
of $100 million.
He's trying to bridge the deficit that we have in the state of New Jersey.
And is that a good thing?
No.
And have you been naughty this year? Afraid to receive coal in your stocking? If you're a union teacher, don't worry about it. Teachers first, kids second.
Wow.
Why did they include that? That was like, I was like learning. It was like,
I was gonna say, that's
can we get her on? Like,
Yeah, totally. I would absolutely, I would have her on. But like, it just seems like, so the two things in this video. One, the point they ended on, that you actually have due process protections before you get fired as a teacher in New Jersey if you've been there for a few years, which apparently James thinks is a really bad thing. Some of the other videos in this series that we didn't clip are basically just like James or other undercover Project Veritas people, but talking to like union officials and being like, well, what if I do this bad thing? Then will the union represent me in the process? And they're like, yeah, of course. Right? Like that's how that works, right? Which is like saying like, that you've really done a gotcha for a criminal defense attorney when you're like, so what if I was accused of murder? Would you still defend me? It's like, yeah, the criminal defense attorney, right? I mean, that's my
double
job.
murder, triple murder. What about
It's like, yes, if you're accused of a crime, I'll defend you, right? Like that. This is a good thing that you have, workers organizations that can help people through the process and make sure that they're not being railroaded. But even if somebody really did it, it's good to to have to prove it. Right, that they have to prove that they really did the bad thing and that it really was that bad. That's these all seem like good things to me. But then, so that's half of it, right? They're just outraged about that it's not easier to fire teachers in New Jersey. But then the other half is like, oh my God, do you know that unionized like activist teachers in New Jersey really hate Chris Christie? It's like, I don't know. They seem to be giving a lot of good reasons.
It's like, apart from intent, which is to be like, a bootlicking snitch for America's bosses, that's some of the best journalism I've ever seen. Like, it's honestly like found footage, like to see these women express themselves and hit Cory Booker, like, motherfucker. Like, if you weren't just like a Republican hack or like a pro-corporate hack, you understand, like, this is not just someone attacking a Republican. They're attacking a class of politician that is like, I mean, I don't know how else to say it, but elite. Like, and they want to hollow out public education for profit, and all those teachers give you that, and right from like, I mean, it makes me feel ashamed. Like, we should be doing this sort of stuff, except like, I guess the problem is like, you get people to speak candidly, then
right.
It does feel like you're exposing them, right? But like, and so it's like there's something that's kind of like. Sort of like
yeah. I mean, it's right because people are afraid, as you see in the clips, they're afraid to be caught saying these things because they're worried that if they speak their mind about these important issues that affect them, that despite the teachers union being there, that that'll still be used against them, that it'll still be bad, which, I mean, but they're not. I mean, what they're saying is like, look, here's a list of actually very well thought out complaints about how horrible Chris Christie was as the governor of New Jersey, right? Like, what were they wrong about exactly?
Yeah, you go from like the systemic analysis of charter schools to like psychoanalysis of something a teacher did something to him, but like that's all that's I put that in a time capsule. Like I would love to hear what like teachers like 100 years ago were saying about their governor. That is absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, no, and right. I mean that they seem to have a good analysis of it. That they're
And, like,
right about.
It's so
They're
wild,
right about
man.
the
Like,
charter schools. They're right that it's bipartisan. But yeah, you were saying.
right. I mean, it's just so wild. Like that clip is like, yeah, they're cutting our resources, and it's like, yeah, go Chris Christie. Look at how awesome he is. It's like I feel like I'm like going crazy. How like unless you're really narrow casting this to a certain like Breitbart audience, let's face it. Like, to anybody else, that just seems bizarre.
Yeah, absolutely. It does make me wonder what like any random person who happened to come across this footage ever thought about it, right? I mean, obviously, it has been many a moon since I've seen a Girls Gone Wild commercial, so this is all wild the past, but
Look, hey, it's a brilliant idea. Like let's take like the weaponized misogyny of Girls Gone Wild and aim that at teachers. Like it's a perfect plan. Yeah.
I think Girls Gone Wild was mostly the girls giving like very nuanced critiques of misogynistic culture, and it was like, can you believe it? Like,
these sorority girls are in Cancun, and you won't believe what they have to say about daycare and abortion access.
Yeah, they would probably react. Yeah, they'd probably react the same way to their core audience.
Hey, equity.
Look at this wacky girl. She's talking about consent. Ha ha ha.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's like a more perfect Union video, but just like clandestinely shot, but like making like the same points basically. Yeah, it's not one of his greatest hits, I guess.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, we have done the full hat trick of Tulsi, Tim, and James, and I do want to get to the post game with Rob Larson, but first, if we should, I have. Trust me, I was even if I had been inclined to buy videos from infomercials in 2010, I would not have, just for cheapness alone, right? That wouldn't have happened. So, guys, let's get Andy back, and let's transition to an entirely happier topic, which is some election results that just happened. And I should actually say that while we're doing this, the second one is a much bigger deal than the first one, but the first one's still a big deal. That that in France, Emmanuel Macron's shitty, awful neoliberal party just lost their absolute majority to a left coalition left by Mélenchon. I should say our collective grandfather had a good tweet about that. If we have that, he says, Bernie Sanders says the French elections, given the choice between progressives who want to increase taxes on the rich or right-wing extremists who are viciously anti-immigrant, the pro-business centrist party of Macron just couldn't make a choice. There is a lesson to be learned here. Which is actually a little understated for a Bernie tweet, but you get the idea.
It's understated, but also kind of more pointed critique of a party or warning than I'm used to from Bernie. So I like that.
Yeah.
Go fuck this up, guys. Even though you're definitely going to, even though you're telegraphing that you're absolutely going to.
Exactly. But the one that we really want to talk about and actually pour one out so celebrate. We have a tweet from British Bernie about this one. So the absolute boy, Jeremy Corbyn, says, incredible news from Colombia with the election of a socialist president who has shown the power of community organizing to build a popular policy platform to heal the divisions of the past and bring about social justice. Felicidades y solidaridad, Petro Gustavo. So before we toast and finish up the main show and go to the post game, let's Matt, do you want to do the honors here? Just say just a second about like why this election result in Colombia is quite such a big deal.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm certainly not the expert on Colombian politics, otherwise to know that it's been extremely war ravaged and right wing for a large number. I mean, decades, maybe a century, and that they're a big client of American, I mean, particularly anti-drug war stuff. And one thing that I always think about with like, we wonder why it takes so long for us to end the drug war domestically. And part of it like might be just like we want to like control and continue controlling people domestically, like, and not the options that gives cops, but also we have these partnerships worldwide where they are still, I mean, you know, and we can't really let them down either. So I mean, from a American perspective, I'm curious, like, as this, like, I don't know if this is a second wave of the pink tide or whatever's going on now, if like how that plays out in it, because that's what my suspicion has been with why the drug war lingers. It's because it's a global policing, it's a global like police empowerment thing. So I mean, yeah, I mean, Petro seems like I've seen him described as like a sort of Bernie style reformer in a country that has never seen that ever. So I mean, good luck to him, and keep him safe, I think, is my instinct there.
Yeah, I mean, like, just like, you know, people who, you know, may remember, you know, if you remember the early 2000s, right? You know, they were very, you know, that there were credible accusations that Coca-Cola or its contractors in Colombia were using right-wing death squads to kill union organizers. I mean, this is, you know, like, I think a lot of times with Latin America, I think from a distance it might be hard to realize that, like, even very mild social democratic platforms, you know, I mean, my God, I mean, look at the response to Lula, you know, and like how, like, relatively little in the greater scheme of things he actually, you know, managed or even tried really to change, you know, as president, you know. But I mean, like, just the sort of deeply entrenched local oligarchy, you know, with the back into the United States, you know, still, you know, like, was willing to move heaven and earth to get rid of him, right? You know, so I mean, this is a big deal, and it makes me very happy, and it's actually maybe the only reason, definitely the only reason that there's some small part of me that's actually happy that Henry Kissinger is still alive to see leftists get elected all over Latin America. So we will end on this, but cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Left is best.
Left is best.